Hello everyone and welcome back to the Making a Level from Scratch series, where I take a level from concept all the way to a finished map in the engine for the game Empire at War, Forces of Corruption. In this episode I'm going to talk about making a basic blockout and working with an editor or whatever you may be working with. In this case it is the EAW terrain editor, which is the way you make maps for this game. Before I get into what a blockout is and all that stuff, I wanted to talk briefly about what I'm doing here, and that's setting up the map in the editor. So you can see that the map type is forest, which gives ambient sound. The faction owner is branched. And right here I'm going to be doing something that's actually pretty important, is a little bit of research. Now, I'm going to be doing research on the planet Yaga Minor, which is a map in the mod that I'm working for that needs a land map, right? So I'm looking for maps that fit the description of the map that I'm trying to make, and that is something that has caves, forests, and mountains. And right here I'm going to find it as I'm looking for physical information. So I find out that the map indeed has forests, mountains, and from the picture itself I could see that it is water-based as well, so it fits in our theme of the map. And the map also is said to be a fortress world, and this map is very much themed after a fortress kind of defensive formation. So important part of the map is to kind of give it I talked about theme, but also to give it kind of a backstory, to kind of make it, I guess, contextualize it within the game. So that's what I've done, and I picked Yaga Minor as the planet that I'm going to put this land map as. And I set this map up, is something that's going to come up a little bit later, is scale. And since this was my first real endeavor working in this editor, I didn't really understand the scale really well, and the scale that I wanted to get out of the map. So you'll see later on the scale's going to change a lot of times through development. So on to the blockout. Here I'm going to be doing basic, I guess, texturing for the map, just to give it a feel. The texture that I actually picked is something that I'm going to change because I found out that it's just too depressing for a forest map. So it's the things, I guess, a blockout really demands simplicity. So what is a blockout? A blockout is you're trying to get the function of your map going. So it's in engine and it's there for playtesting, and you have the basic gameplay figured out, but the art isn't quite there. So you're using basic meshes, basic terrain, just to get the idea across. Now, why would you do blockout versus just start working on the map and work it all the way through? The reason is, like I said, playtesting. You want to be able to change the map quickly if you find out that your map is just not working properly, if the flow's wrong, if something you don't like, if it's like in my case, the scale was off. It makes it much harder to change things once you have arted it and you have final art. In this game it's easy because you have a bunch of preset stuff. It's still time consuming, and you want to cut down as much on time when you're working on these things. So you want to get the map functional very quickly, and you want to make it able to be play tested. So what I'm going to end up doing during this time is just getting the basic structure of the map, getting the paths right, getting the heights right, the size sort of right to what I want out of the map, and also making sure that all the objectives for the game work, so that I can actually put this into the engine and land some troops and battle against an opponent. So I'm going to put things like basic buildings, markers, and everything that the game needs so that it functions. And that is a basic blockout in engine. So here I'm adjusting also the water height, something that there's basic setup in this game that you need to do. For those more interested into how to use the terrain editor, I have a link in the description that is a perfect guide to campaign, scripting, and all that stuff. and it's in the description. And take a look at that, because I really don't want to make this into a engine specific tutorial video. I just kind of want to make it the journey of the map as it progresses, rather than a tutorial for the editor itself. I may end up doing another tutorial later on as another video. The other thing you want to do is get the mood of your map kind of set up. I kind of mess around with different skybox colors and terrains throughout this. I end up changing the water color a little bit, but you want to get that basic mood set up going. It's important because when you're going to be going and doing the final art, or even when you're testing it, you want to see if the environment is working to your liking, if it's what you envision in the map, and it also leads later on to creative decisions, such as where you put the lighting, how you texture the map, what types of scenery you add. Because if your skyboxes are all dark and you wanted this map very cheery, you're going to end up having clashing textures versus skybox. So you need that stuff figured out early on. Here I'm also setting up the save file for the map. I have a version control system that I use that allows me to quickly edit the map and save it on multiple drives, so that remember to always back up your stuff. Map editing is, it takes lots of time, as with everything, and you want multiple backups. So you don't want to lose all your progress and have to redo it. Yeah, so the last thing I wanted to talk about before the map gets really worked on. See, here I'm also testing scale. So I'm taking objects that are already pre-built, and I kind of remember what they are like inside the game, and I'm kind of testing what the scale is like. So how because taking a map from a paper drawing, you might be using, I guess, length, I don't know what they're called, legends or something, like where you have the scale kind of predetermined based on the paper that you're using. So like if you have grids, 5 grids equals this many units in your game engine. I didn't do that. I just kind of did it freely, since I didn't have any graph paper or anything like that. And I kind of just had an idea based on the objects in my image that kind of dictated how big the map would be. So here I'm testing it based on a couple of these objects in the game to see how big this map is actually going to end up. And I actually overestimate the size that I needed for this map, simply because it's different working in the editor than it is actually working in the game engine, or in the game, as it's actually you can zoom out a lot further in the editor, and so your scale is kind of skewed. Because you think, oh, this map's small, and then you actually start working within it and start placing objects, and you're like, whoa, this map's actually much bigger than I thought it would be. So that's kind of the problem that I run into, as I've said multiple times. So that's kind of the challenge, one of the challenges that I face in this, and you're going to see why the blockout becomes so important, because I could change things really quickly, and I haven't put any art into this thing. I've just made it functional, so it's really quick. There's also going to be, you're going to see at one point in the video, passability is going to change. So I'm going to be doing passability so that the AI and stuff can and your units can actually move through it. And I set that up based on what I have in the picture, or the layout of the map that I drew up, even though the scenery's not there to make it believable. So the last part I wanted to talk about is the height maps, and how, I guess, what I'm going to be doing here is I'm going to be editing the height, because so most maps for terrain start off with something called a height map, which is you could see it in the there's a square in the left side where I'm editing the height, and it's kind of like a picture. It's grayscale, and so what it kind of works like is most most software take an image and take black and white numbers from your RGB values from 0 to 255, and 255 is the highest or lowest, and 0 is the highest or lowest based on how it's done. So it takes that image and then creates a mesh for the terrain based on that number. So that's what a height map is, and in this editor, that's kind of done. The height map is adjusted as you're actually working with the tools in it, but you can actually import the height map separately. I don't know, you can't actually export it, which is why I had to actually do all this manually, or I could have created an image height map based on my image, overlaid it, and I turned it into a height map. But the thing is that I didn't know what each RGB value represented what height, so I just had to kind of manually do it at the start. And that's, you're gonna end up probably doing most of the stuff manually anyways, because if you're gonna try and do it through height maps, it's very hit or miss. So if you have an engine editor, it's actually better to do that. Alright, so here we are in our Blockout map. This map took me around, I'd say 2 to 3 hours to complete, so really quick and rough sketch of what the map should play like and what the map should be. So I'm giving you guys an overview. I placed all the buildings and the markers that the game needs to run. So I have all the shield generator and the markers for the defensive positions and the buildings and where they'd be in accordance with the map that I drew up. I'm going to walk around, take a little stroll around this map and just point out the little things that have changed over the course of development and kind of what you should do for a Blockout. So as you can see, the map is quite large, and we're gonna go and put this into the game engine real soon just so you guys get a little bit of scale. So like the kind of the theme of this map and kind of the blunder is how large it is, and the layout is great, and it seems to have exactly what we kind of needed out of the sketch. There's a lot of stuff not in here. For example, in the sketch itself, there's trees that line these paths right here, and that will make this corridor a lot more narrow, and only infantry can walk through these trees. So small things like that are not currently in. This is just to get this is the first rough pass to get what the basic gameplay would feel like out of this map, and that's kind of what you're aiming for in your first Blockout, to kind of test. The mountains actually have been significantly reduced in height. I put it in the engine once just to see what it would look like, and it turns out that my height was also very much off. So yeah, just the scale of this game is quite a bit different than the editor kind of implies or shows. You can see here's the final height map, kind of actually what the map looks like on the image itself, so that's good. You see on the outside here, the mountains are literally just flat, and right here it's just literally a line of mountains. Remember that the map isn't going to look like this at all at the end. Like you're not going to have a map that looks like this in the end. This is just a Blockout. I did this really fast just so I could get the lane down, and just so that I could get the impassability of the AI down. All this is going to be scenery and filled in with trees and mountains and stuff to make it look like it's actually, part of the mountain and stuff like that. But before we do any of the nature stuff, we have to actually first test it in-game to see if we like it and stuff like that. So that's what this Blockout is for. Once again, I think the next phase that we're probably going to be going through and doing is kind of shrinking this map and making the hallways and every canyon just a little bit more narrow and stuff like that. Definitely narrowing this stuff out. I can already see this being a little bit too unnecessarily wide, considering that there's nothing going on this part of the map. And this building, we might actually end up changing a little bit here. I can already see that this needs to be narrowed. It's unnecessarily wide. Like all this is just a little bit unnecessarily wide. So that's a very simple fix, one that we'll be doing. This avenue of attack seems to be a little bit too wide, so vehicles can literally just like bypass all the turbo lasers. There's not even a threat, so all this has to get a little bit shrunk down. and stuff like that. These are sort of the things that you start figuring out as you see the map in development, and you're just like, oh, maybe that's a little too large or too small or something like that. Even before you playtest, you start to get kind of a sense of the map and what things you're going to have to end up fixing. I actually also smoothed out the slopes from the different heights. It's not exactly perfect, but it's kind of like what you'd expect out of the final game or the final map. But it's definitely going to change. You might end up adding a little bit more mountains and a little bit more cover and making it a little bit more unique. But it's just to get the map functioning right. Also, what I did is I set up the AI data, so I'm going to click AI data here. And this is special to this game. This is what makes the AI run. So you have to generate one of these before the AI actually works in your level, as I actually found out when I was playtesting for the first time off screen. I found out that the AI didn't work, and I went back and actually generated the AI stuff. So here you're gonna see right here it comes up, and you have a bunch of different zones. You can manually change these and edit them, but they already conform to your passability stuff. So they automatically generate. You generate them right here, and yeah, and this is what helps the AI move. And it's good to lay out your passability before you do AI zones, because like I said, these AI zones, you can see that they conform or divide themselves based on your passability. So right here, this is impassable terrain, so the AI zones are already generated based on that. And once you the problem with this is that in order to make it work, you need to generate these AI zones. But if you end up having to change the terrain, you have to change the passability, and then you have to regenerate these AI hint zones in order for all of this to work. So it's a little bit of a process, but it is much more worth it in the long run. If instead of like making an entire map all the way through and then finding out it's complete crap and then having to start over. Alright, in the next part I'm going to be doing the in-game playtest, and I'm going to be discussing the different things that we learned from the in-game playtest in terms of flow and gameplay and how the AI plays the map. Thank you very much for watching, and I hope to see you guys in the next part. I hope you guys enjoy the rest of your day. See you later.